Thank you, Graham. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Halton Police Board meeting for February 24th, 2022. To those of the public who have joined us this morning, you're welcome, and we appreciate you tuning in to see and listen to the deliberations of your Halton Police Board as we direct and set the course for public safety in Halton Region. Members of the board, do we have any declarations of conflict of interest to declare today? Not seeing any. Mr. Secretary, do we have any regrets this morning?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Allen has regrets today.
Thank you. We've noted that. Members of the board, I want to draw your attention to item 1.3 on our public agenda this morning. That's the confirmation of the minutes from our public meeting held on Thursday, January 27, 2022. Can I get a motion to adopt those minutes, please? Mr. Clark, seconded by Ingrid. Thank you very much. Are there any comments, questions, errors, or omissions to report? Not seeing any, I'll ask if there are any objections to the approval of those minutes. Seeing none, those are approved. We do not have any presentations on the agenda this morning, but we do have quite a lengthy consent agenda. There are 8 items on that agenda. Before I look for a motion to approve the consent agenda items, are there any separations? Let's start with Clark.
Yes, the Halton happenings, Mr. Chair.
3.1. I saw Nav's hand up. Which?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 3.5, please.
3.5. 3.1 and 3.5. Do I have anybody for any of the other ones? Not seeing any. Can I get a motion to approve 3.2, 3.3, 3.4, 3.6, 3.7, and 3.8? Thank you, Clark and Nav. Any further comments or questions on those? Any objections to the approval of the staff recommendations? Those are approved. For the sake of the public's interest, I am going to report that we've just approved our public agenda consent items, 3.2, which is the financial report for the full fiscal year 2021, 3.3, which is purchasing activity report for July to December 2021, 3.4, the trust fund statement for, as of December 31st, 2021, 3.6, donations to service as at December 31st, 2021, 3.7, the collection of identifying information on certain in certain circumstances, and 3.8, communications update. I will note anybody that is interested in learning more about those particular items, you're welcome to visit our website at haltonpoliceboard.ca, where our agenda is posted and all the reports that we just addressed are located there. So let's go to 3.1, and Councillor Somerville had separated this item. Clark?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's on the top of page 2, the Mobile Crisis Rapid Response Team. And it was just more to highlight, for anyone who may be watching, but just I guess as the reminder of it is the amount of calls that the service responds to that are mental health priority calls. Because when you look at that, it's always such a startling statistic that we get each month. And it really shows how, the tremendous work the service does in responding to these calls. So it's just, that's why I wanted to pause it, because, we see 78.3% of the team's occurrences involve providing mental health support in the community. And I don't think the public realizes how much time our officers spend when they go out doing that. So that's why I wanted to hold this one, Mr. Chair, was just for those comments, and we'll move it at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Very appropriate comments, but it looks like you've also encouraged some further comments. Pav?
Thank you, Chair. I thank you for those comments as well. I actually have a different point, though. My question, actually, curiosity, was on page 5. There was the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Office report. And it was reported that we met virtually with 13 individuals who recently moved to the region of Halton through the Emergency Services Introduction for New Canadians. And I was curious to know, are we partnering up with specific community groups to kind of target new Canadians? How do we go about meeting and, having these presentations with these newcomers to Canada? And the reason I'm asking is because, as we all know, immigration is a priority now for our government, and there is going to be a significant increase in newcomers to the country. And I was wondering, are we connecting with Halton Multicultural Council? Are we connecting with the newcomer associations in our community so that we can make sure we are delivering these very informative presentations?
Thanks for the question. We'll go to Chief Tanner for the answer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't have asked that question any better. Just sort of teed it up, but no, we have a fantastic relationship with the multicultural group and groups across the region. I think Julie, Inspector Craddock's on the line, as well as Deputy Chief Wilkie, to speak to this. But that's where really the beauty of setting up the e-sync, the 911 days that we used to have at headquarters pre-COVID, where new immigrant families and others would come to learn about policing in Canada and in Halton, and how that was different, perhaps very different from where they came from. And also have our fire partners and our paramedic partners there too. So we normally, and I'd be surprised if we don't, we normally have someone actually on the executive board of that organization as well. But over to you, Raj.
Thanks, Chief, and to the chair. Thank you for the question. We do have someone sitting on the board of the Multicultural Council. We've been longstanding partners with them for over a decade in the development of programming for newcomers to Canada, and specifically to the Halton region. In fact, the last 2 years, we've been working on video programming in a number of different languages to provide information about safe driving and rules of the road, and the importance of insurance, and a bunch of different things that just would be a stressor for a new Canadian operating in a new land. So we're very proud of the partnerships that we do have, and this is just one example of something that happened in January.
Thank you,
Great,
Deputy.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Chief, you had a comment on the previous question, or previous comment about our COAST program.
I just wanted to come back on the rapid crisis response teams, and they certainly are busy. All of our frontline people are busy with an enormous number of mental health related calls. There are some nights where, you know, in any one of our districts, there's 4 or 5 major calls that are highlighted, and sometimes all of them are mental health related. Persons in crisis, perhaps combined with drug and alcohol addiction, as it very often is. But that is an area that we are looking to increase within the service with some provincial funding as well. So we'll look at trained crisis response people being able to respond to even more of these situations. And there's so many tragedies when it comes to mental health. So we're certainly alive to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Deputy Wilkie.
To the chair, I was going to provide an update in the operational update section, but it is with regards to the mobile crisis rapid response team. So we have been successful in securing a 1-year funding to expand that MCIR program. I just had the opportunity to meet with Sergeant Rick Judson and Inspector Craddock the other day to understand what that model of deployment is going to be. We're going to be able to, once we have the staffing from our mental health provider, is that put on another team that will obviously supplement the need on the front line. So we're very excited to advise the board in the coming months of what that looks like once we get that person in play. We already have the officers identified, and they're trained and ready to go. So that's a great addition to our investment in mental health crisis. I do want to point out, though, that in the Halton happenings, that one particular section that Councillor Somerville spoke to was inserted into Halton happenings about 6 or 7 years ago, when we actually started the MCIR program, because you wanted to justify the existence and kind of show what kind of work volume they would actually encounter. The reality is that those stats are just what those 2 teams deal with. There is a greater volume of mental health crisis calls that our frontline folks, even civilians at the front desk, encounter on a daily basis. And I think moving forward, what I'd like to propose with the board's approval is to provide like an annual snapshot of all the mental health work that's being done. It's instead of a month over month, to have like an annual or a semi-annual type of report that would go and provide the board with a great understanding of the risks in our community, and all the great work that is being done by our officers through exceptional training and devotion to public safety. So I'll leave that with the board. Thank you.
I don't see any objection to that. So I think that would be a wonderful idea. Thank you, Deputy. That would be quite a useful piece of information. Fred.
Thank you, Chair. Deputy Wilkie's suggestion would be something that would come out of the audit that the board ordered last month and is scheduled over the next 2 months. That's an audit of the Halton happenings reporting.
Right.
So that's one of the possible outcomes.
That's a great place to discuss that further. Thanks for that, Fred. Pav?
Thank you, Chair. I just also wanted to take a moment to highlight to everybody online today that we actually held in my capacity as a counselor, I held a town hall meeting with the Halton Police, and we had Detective Sergeant Ron Wright and Superintendent Jeff Sandy attend. The police board chair was there as well. And I just wanted to say thank you. It was a great way to engage with a new community. And I think it's important to highlight that our service is engaging in these town halls whenever they're able to participate. And we really appreciate that.
Thank you, Pav. I can tell you that I found that particular meeting quite useful. I sat in on it, and I've sat in a couple now as chair, and I would strongly encourage my colleagues on council to potentially organize these in their communities. I think they're quite useful, whether there's emergent issues or not. I think sometimes just having that opportunity to have that organized conversation with their local police districts is quite beneficial. I know that Councillor Parmar's session was taped, and I believe I saw that the mayor of Oakville had reposted it. So if you want to have a look at it, I think it may be worthwhile. There's actually some really interesting information on it, but also just the format and how that process works. So if there are board members or councillors that are interested in setting these things up in your community, I think that would be a worthwhile activity to activate your community and to get them directly connected with their police friends. So thanks for doing that, Pav. Good initiative. Thank you. I saw a hand. It was Don. Don?
Excuse me. I was just confirming exactly what you said. I had an opportunity of watching it last night, and it was excellent. And I concur with everything that you mentioned.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Somerville, Clark, you had separated 3.1. Would you mind moving it for me? Or yeah, 3.1. Would you mind moving that for me? Thank you. Seconded by? Seconded by, please. Anybody? Thank you, Pav. Any further comments or questions? That's received. Moving on to 3.5, that was separated by Nav, so we'll go to Nav first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the hate-related occurrence report has been very extensive, and I like the fact that we are doing a tremendous job in introducing some initiatives. But I think I want to ask the chief, since 2020, we haven't seen too much of a drop in the hate-related occurrences. I'm wondering if we need to do something a little more aggressive, or I'm looking at one coordinator from our region with respect to the 15 police services across the province. What other measures can we do to make sure that the occurrences actually decrease in the following year?
That's a very good question, Pav. It's to guarantee that the occurrences decrease is probably pretty difficult, given all the work that we're doing already, even to keep them at the same sort of level. But I think you've seen the proactive programs, the No Place for Hate program that the police service was involved with, many community partners, all of our anti-racism, anti-discrimination, social media work that we've been doing, and then the investigative work behind the scenes and some of the more high-profile ones, if we call it that. There is an increase, and this is really an increase certainly across all of North America, throughout the United States, and around the world in a lot of different countries, on anti-Semitism, as just one example of a group that are targeted by hate. And then, of course, there is every other diverse group in our LGBTQ communities. And so hate crime, I think, has been impacted to a degree by COVID. People have been put into different frames of minds or into different situations. And so I am hopeful that the world starts to even out a little bit in the months and the year ahead. But I think our investigative work is key to highlighting that you can't just do these things and get away with it. Now, a lot of our incidents that are in that report were theft of flags and different things, which are very serious, but not to be confused with individuals being physically harmed or other sorts of things that we see around the GTA or beyond. But we take all of these seriously. We're actually dealing with a couple of incidents from last night that may be racially based. We're not sure about that yet, but we've got detectives all over those incidents and working on those as well. So I think it's a combination of education. We've also noted, and Raj may have more comments on this, but I think a fair number of our hate incidents are coming out of the schools. And it's one of those things where when we're working with the schools and with the school boards, we want people to report when things happen. So sometimes we should not be surprised if we get more things reported, if people are more comfortable reporting them to us. It's sort of similar but different from domestic violence, intimate partner violence campaigns or sexual assault campaigns, human trafficking. To come forward and tell us when these things happen. Don't just keep it to yourself. So I would think that hate crime is very underreported. And as people become more comfortable to us, I would actually think that and this is the problem sometimes with metrics and how we measure things, is success that the hate incidents that are reported to the Halton Regional Police goes down, or is success actually in one way that it goes up because people have that relationship and that desire to help us prevent it in the bigger picture. So it's a very complex and certainly, way beyond Halton where all of these things are happening as well. But I think we have a good balanced approach to it here between social media, education, working with our school boards, and the investigative side that we're keeping it in check.
Thank you, Chief. Nav, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Chief. I think what's alarming is in Oakville, we're seeing the hate crime occurrences higher than all of the three regions combined. There is, and if you look at the graph itself, you see the cluster around Oakville. Is there something specific that we need to do for Oakville?
Yeah, I'm just working off my iPhone. Sorry, not that not off the top of my head, but I'm working on my iPhone, so I do not have access to that today, Nav. But I know Roger does if he wants to make a comment on the specifics.
Okay.
Deputy.
Thank you, Chief, and through the chair. So when we launched the No Hate in Halton initiative in partnership with Crime Stoppers, that's obviously a significant and safe path for students to report incidents. I think that we don't have any way to explain why there's 10 more incidents in Oakville, but we do know that we're receiving traction with those initiatives, which is a positive sign that people are finding a safe space to come and report. The analysis of that hasn't been done, having an additional 10 in Oakville versus in the other area. If you look at the diversity spectrum in Oakville compared to Burlington, it's a little bit more diverse. And so I think we'll continue to monitor this. We are working with our schools and with our partners with HMC and others to understand what the needs of those communities are. And I think that we are doing the right thing proactively to ensure that we have a safe way to report these things. The report does outline, enforcement is one thing, but this is certainly a shared responsibility. This is parents needing to do their job. It's educators doing their jobs. And I think if we all chip in and we do our part in the upstream preventative pieces, we will be able to manage and mitigate these risks to our community through hate crime incidents.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm still at a loss. I understand a lot of work has been done through education, and that's primarily the avenue to go. I'm looking at the fact that the patrol increasing patrols or for the Prevent program, we've only spent 40 hours. I'm not sure. I don't think patrolling the streets is a way to go, but I think that we need to do a little bit more. So I'm just looking for more initiatives that will actually prevent crime in this area.
Maybe if you allow us a bit of time to look into the Oakville statistics specifically, there may be one source of a number of those. So let us look into that, because sometimes statistics can be a little bit skewed that way, either one location or one perpetrator, or all those different dynamics come into play. So we'll have a better look at the Oakville numbers and see where they're coming from and the level that they're at. And we could do something back on that in March.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Can I just ask a question, maybe to probe just a little bit deeper on Nav's question? Is it possible that those numbers, and maybe you can't, maybe the staff can answer this question, but is it possible those numbers relate to the flurry of hate incidents that were targeted at the Chinese community that we were, I guess, involved with? I know I attended a forum on that at one point. There was quite a number of incidents in the Southeast Oakville area in particular. Is it possible that those are connected to the higher number in Oakville?
It could be that as one source, Mr. Chair. The other thing is, I remember specifically there were a fairly large number of thefts of pride flags.
Oh, right.
Under this heading as well, because it turned a group. So, again, not to downplay that at all, that should never happen. But that is the sorts of things that can. Okay. I think it was 2 young males. Stole 9 or 10 pride flags from different properties. So it can really skew things that way.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And there's a couple of comments by the chief that I think highlighted what I want to raise on this item. And I appreciate Navneet holding it, because I probably would have just emailed the chief to ask this. But I'm wondering about the communication of reminding people, if they do see, offensive symbols and other items like that, to report it. Because as the chief said, it is underreported, but a lot of people may just, be aghast by what they see, and they just clean it up and go about the day. So I'm wondering if that's something that we need to look at, both from a service standpoint, but also as a board standpoint of, letting people know, if you do see this, report it. I know for the, municipally, and Navneet or Pav and Jeff would know this as well, is that when we get graffiti on our, and anywhere in parks, we take the photos of it, and then, they try to get it cleaned up and everything as well. But I just wonder if there's a comment on that from the chief or from any of the deputies on doing something like that.
Go ahead, Raj. Do you want to?
Thank you.
I can comment on that if you'd like, Chief.
Thanks, Julie.
Good morning, everyone. So lots kind of to unpack. So a couple of things that everyone's touched on. As far as reporting graffiti, we do encourage people to report that through our social media campaigns, when we come out to community presentations, when we're engaged with the community at different events. And the reason for that is because we actually know that a hate symbol or something that represents that, even though it might not be targeted at a specific individual, that it has impact on that community. So we do really encourage that, and we have a really comprehensive approach to any hate occurrence, so that our EDI office actually makes connections with the community, with homeowners, even if it's something like a vandalism, because we do really recognize that that can be really significant. So as far as encouraging the reporting, we certainly do that. We have run numerous campaigns through our schools, so working with Crime Stoppers so that people can report anonymously. We have QR codes in bathrooms and in places where kids might feel more comfortable reporting, so that it's not sort of in the public eye. The No Hate in Halton campaign we ran with the schools. We reached over 180 schools, and the social media outreach has been huge. So that's certainly something we're doing. As far as the Oakville stats go, there's not really any specific cluster that's happened there. The majority of them are vandalism. Superintendent Mahar's on the call as well today. And, you know, the good news story here in Halton is that we don't have any real extremism. So they tend to be incidents where they're amongst our school age population, where there are things like vandalism. And as Deputy Wilkie said, you know, really, this is a shared responsibility. We are doing a ton of work when it comes to outreach, supporting victims, and investigating. And what we're trying to really get the message out to is that we all need to work together. One of the things, and the chief mentioned it, is an increase in hate crime reporting is bad in the sense that there's a hate incident, but it's not bad in the sense that we actually want people to feel comfortable reporting so that we can provide that support to the community in other ways. When it comes to prevent, that really is a response to a global incident. That's how we capture that work when something globally happens, and we want to mobilize resources in the community to make that community feel that they're supported and that they're safe. And so random patrols as a response to hate incidents is really challenging because a lot of them happen very randomly. They don't get reported sometimes for days later until somebody kind of comes across that. And so it's really hard to do a targeted patrol, but we use prevent when we really want to support a community because of something that's happened globally.
Clark, you still have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, Julie, because, you know, I know that there's a lot of work that is done on it, but I guess it's just that it's one of those where you try to keep it top of mind. So when people see it, they know how, you know, to do that as well. It was interesting last week as I had my a niece of mine who's in the US called and asked because she said, well, there was a hate incident at her school. And, you know, she wanted to know what, you know, how to deal with it. So what they have in that state is if kids ever see any incidents like this, they have a 1-800 number they can phone into and give all the details on. And she said, well, you know, we let the teacher know that this girl who it happened to had phoned the number. And I said, well, you know, the other thing you do is to make sure that it's being taken care of seriously is a couple of you go down and talk to the principal and say, this is what happened and what are you going to do about it? Because it was just stuff that, you know, teenagers in high school shouldn't have to deal with, but sadly we know that they do. And hopefully one day this is something we don't even have to ever have a conversation about, which would be really nice to have. But thank you for all the work the service does on this.
Thanks, Clark. Pav, you're up next.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of comments. So thank you to my colleague, Ms. Sikon. I had the same thought when I saw the number of occurrences, and Chief, we'll leave it to you and your team to kind of look into that a little bit further. I had thought that the increase in incidents in Oakville might have had something to do with population numbers as well. So we'll wait to hear back from you on that. But my question is specifically about the victims. And I was wondering if our service is connecting the victims of hate crimes with any social supports after the fact, or if that would be, you know, for example, if there was an incident in a school, if it would be the school board's responsibility, then if, you know, the student needed to speak with somebody after, you know, undergoing a traumatic incident.
Absolutely. And do you want to take that, Julie? I know you've got all the details.
Sure. Yeah, it's really a tailored approach. So every time we receive a hate occurrence, so anything that sort of falls under that category, that's reviewed by the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Office. That sergeant and his team reaches out to that person. And then it's really from there a customized approach, depending on really what the victim and their family a lot of the time want. So some people are happy just that we've reached out and they want to know that we're actively pursuing this and looking into it. Other people do require supports in different ways, and that would be really dependent on what it is that that person wants. This unit is very well connected with all of our groups in the community that provide supports. Within our service, we have our youth officers and we have our social workers. And so we also can provide support in that way. But it really, for us, it's about, you know, just really listening to what it is that the person who's been impacted by this, what they're feeling, and really supporting them with whatever it is that they need in order to. So it's not a one size fits all approach. It's really customized to the individual situation and the needs of that person.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Nav, you you want to speak again? You're up next then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to really reiterate that I think it's important that the community feels safe, and the community, when they move into a particular area in Halton, they feel welcomed, and hate crimes or even slurs or any of these occurrences will actually diminish that type of safety within people. And I can tell you that I've just moved into Oakville. I moved 2 homes. I'm not felt really welcomed. Either side of our neighbors have, they feel a sense of insecurity. I could tell you from my personal experience that we need to do something about it, because whenever I don't know what kind of preventive measures there are, and I don't know when somebody actually does report these type of issues, that these are not taken seriously. And if they are taken seriously, are they being punished into a level where it's actually then the community feels like they're reporting even further. So these are the kind of things that I want to see, actually impact the numbers for the following year. And so that's why I think education is great. Messaging is great. I would like to see some real penalties for this type of, because that's where you're going to prevent these kind of reoccurrences. Thanks.
Andrew?
Thanks, Nav. And that gets into a whole bigger issue. If the hate crime is at the level where we're able to lay the criminal charges, such as we did in the Burlington case not that long ago, then it's on to the courts. And I honestly believe and support you fully and everyone else that the courts need to take hate crimes seriously and give out some reasonably heavy penalties for it, so it's a deterrent. I was also thinking recently, and I haven't thought through how it would work, but there are a lot of hate incidents that are not hate crimes, which means there is no criminal offense. And I've been wondering to myself why there cannot be some sort of a provincial offense. And maybe it would have some certain parameters around it, or the use of certain language. But there might be something where there could be a deterrent, where it's not criminal, but it's still not right. It's complicated, but there's lots of things to think about. But on the justice side, that is the justice system. We have to work with that, and we can certainly, police services boards and chiefs can lobby the different bodies for that change.
Question for you, Chief. Nav, are you done?
No, I just want to say thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Nav. Question for you on that. When you're talking about a provincial charge, are you referring to something of the Provincial Offences Act, so that it is so it's easier to manage and be more direct in its impact? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
I've only started to think about this in the last week or so because of some incidents that I heard about in Toronto around some of the protests. But it was behavior directed at either members of the LGBTQ community or the Black community that were walking by those protests. And it sort of strikes me that there should be some, at least the most offensive language that we can think of, whatever those words are. Not talking about swearing words.
Yeah.
But there could be something. A police officer may even overhear that and not have anything that they can do, right? So it's in its infancy. I will talk to some people at the Solicitor General's office just about it in general and see if there's any way that sort of thing could be done. But we have Trespass to Property Act, we have the Liquor License Act, we have the Highway Traffic Act, of course. So maybe there is a possibility.
It's a very interesting idea. I'm wondering, have you discussed that with the Chiefs Association to maybe do some advocacy work on that? Or as you said, it's a relatively new idea. Maybe you haven't had the chance to yet.
But it's only in the last week or so that I thought of that when someone told me about the situation in Toronto that they had seen.
Yeah, it's an interesting tool. And when you've got those judgment cases where the officer wants to decide whether to press formal criminal charges versus having another tool available to them other than shaking their finger at somebody, that would be potentially a very useful and more painful tool than just basically being let go. I'd be very interested in knowing more about that at the board level. Perhaps we could even support your initiatives once you sort of flesh them out a little bit more and write a letter as well.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I don't see anybody else on this matter. Nav, would you mind giving me a motion to receive 3.5, please? Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Seconder for 3.5, please. Thank you, Pav. Any objections to the approval of the resolution? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you very much. Okay, we're moving on to item 4.1. 4.1 is the capital projects program status as at December 31st, 2021. Does anybody have any questions? I don't think that there's a particularly report on this. If nobody has questions, I do think the report is self-explanatory. I'd look for a motion to approve the recommendation contained in the report. Thank you, Ingrid. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Pav. Any further comments or discussion? That's approved. 4.2, all event marketing contract funding request. Perhaps somebody just give us a little bit of an overview on this.
I'll turn it over to anyone who has that in front of them.
Is this a Paul thing?
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So All of On Marketing is a company that we use to produce various of our materials, including our notebooks that the officers use. We have a contract with them, but we need some additional funding to carry us through to the end of that contract. We know that notebooks are perhaps a dinosaur of the future as we move more towards electronic notes. So we're asking for additional funding to get us through this year, and then we'll deal with presumably a smaller volume of these notebooks year after year.
Thank you. Now, if you have a question.
So I'd just like to understand what is so impressive about these custom notebooks versus regular notebooks.
I'll allow an officer to respond to that.
Deputies, chief?
Well, they tend to have I guess one part is there's a certain size that we need to fit in pockets is what it's historically been, so that you can carry them with you all the time. Pages are numbered so that you can't remove a page and change evidence. So there's a little bit of customization there. The last time I used one of those little notebooks, it would also come with things printed like rights to counsel, different charter things, wording that you would use with arrested persons when you took them into custody, breath demands, all those sorts. So there's a bit more printing the last time. Again, I used one that is customized for policing.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. I know that Paul had touched on the fact that there's I guess, progress being made on electronic notes in the field. I happen to have occasion to have to deal with an officer last night who had to take copious notes, and the poor young fellow was writing as fast as he could. And I just wonder how far are we along the way of actually getting to that point where we can digitize these notes? Because after he wrote them all out, I read them, and he actually misinterpreted a couple of things or missed a couple of things that I had said, and he gladly corrected it. But if they were recorded, obviously maybe the evidence would be better going forward. What's our progress on that?
Raj, you want to update that one?
Sure, thanks, Chief, and to the chair. So we have the hardware in hand. We have the training modules ready to go. We have been sidelined because of the COVID restrictions. We couldn't assemble a team of people together in a room to deliver the training. But as this lifts, I believe it's within the next week that we start the frontline rollout. So all of our sworn members will have electronic note capabilities within the next month or two. So we look forward to finally getting that across the goal line. And I know Bill's on the line here and he's been part of that project. If you have any other comment, Bill.
Yes, thank you, Deputy, and through the chair. We have about 400 people currently enabled on electronic notes today. It's an incredible system, actually, which, you know, paper notes have been taken since the 1800s in policing. So this is a massive leap forward. It gives supervisors the ability to look in on notes that their staff are taking. So we're seeing the quality improving, disclosure, is a push of a button now instead of scanning and attaching things to go to courts. There's no question of, you know, handwriting, things like that. It's an incredible program. So likely within the next 6 months, we'll have everything out to everyone. The software is fully operational and is seeing broad use already.
That's exciting. I've just noted not that I want to disclose my age at this moment, but I've just noted that it seems that anybody under the age of 30 does not have legible handwriting anymore. And it's probably related to keyboards and iDevices. So I think that'd be particularly useful as our police force gets younger. Nav, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a side comment and question. Are these notes, electronic notes, will they be auditable or do they prevent deletion, and will all that information be captured?
Yeah, after the notes are taken and they're locked, they cannot be changed again. So arguably you would lock them in at the end of the occurrence or the end of your shift, and then it's there, right? And then it's searchable, and there's also mechanisms to put photos, video, different types of things into those notes, which is very helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay, is there anything further on what the 4.2? Can I get a motion to approve the recommendation, please? Thank you, Clark. Seconded by. Thanks, Nav. Any further comments or questions? Any objection to the approval of this motion? Seeing none, that motion is carried. 4.3, Olin Canada Incorporated Limited tendering for ammunition. Again, self-explanatory report. Does anybody have any questions for staff? I'm not seeing any. Can I get a motion to approve this recommendation, please? Thank you, Clark. Seconded by. Anybody? Ingrid, thank you very much. Any comments or questions? Any objection to the approval of this motion? Seeing none, that motion is approved. 4.4, request of the Optimist Club of Oakville. Fred, you want to lead on this?
Thank you, Chair. So I received a letter a few weeks ago from the Optimist Club regarding the Children's Safety Village, which essentially has been shut down through COVID. There's damage to some of the facility, which predates COVID. And additionally, the staff, the HRPS staff working there has since retired. So they're just wondering what the status is. The chair and the chief and Paul's facility manager met several times on this topic over the last few weeks. And maybe I'll let Paul give us an update on the most recent plans.
Yes, thank you, Fred. Chief, did you want to comment before I do? He's off the, oh.
No, I could do that. It's we've had a long and very positive relationship with the Optimists going back to, I think, 1990, when the Safety Village was built. The classroom was actually put in there, I believe, a couple of years later, and has the basement where the Optimists hold monthly meetings, that sort of thing. And they've also contributed significantly over the years to the maintenance of the Safety Village and the small buildings and the vehicles that the older kids use when they come to learn rules of the road there. So we are looking at probably not opening the safety village for students to come there this spring because of COVID. It would probably realistically open in September. And we just want to find the most fiscally responsible way to do the repairs to that building, both the basement where the optimists meet and have some property stored down there, and to the classroom to make sure there is no mold that would be of a risk to anyone. So we're looking at some different options to potentially reduce the cost of that and have the optimists contribute towards that.
Thank you. And just to add to that, Chief, we have met with the region yesterday by Zoom to discuss the procurement processes and how we can expedite them as reasonably as possible, with the goal of getting all the remediation done by September so classes can resume in September.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Chief. I can, my piece of this, I'll report. Just first of all, a disclosure. My wife is the current president of the Oakville Optimist Club. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean a pecuniary interest. In fact, it isn't one. If anything, it's negative because it costs us more than we get out of it. But other than the personal satisfaction of supporting the Optimist Club, I met with the chief and Paul and our facilities manager and Fred, and there's been a number of meetings and a number of pieces of correspondence going back and forth. I'm very happy with the progress on this. I think that getting it back up and going for September is certainly a win. It's a tremendous program for the community. My kids have all been through it years and years ago. I'm looking forward to my grandchildren having an opportunity to do it as they reach that age as well. I'm grateful for the continued support of the police service for this program, and also for the support of the Optimist Club, both in funding the program that they've done and taking care of those buildings and the little cars, but also for their ongoing support of policing in Halton region. So I think that this is a developing story, but so far it looks like it's going to be a good news story, and we should be back in business in September with it. Fred, how do you think we should dispose of this?
I think since this is in public session, I'll write back to the Optimist Club and basically say I've quoted here that the goal is to fully reopen to young learners in September 2022, and HRPS management is currently exploring how best to undertake and fund repairs. And they'll be reaching out. They have reached out to the region. They'll be reaching out to the Optimist Club shortly. Does that sound right, Chief?
Yeah, I think you just want to include where you're saying, understand that the Halton Regional Police Service are going to finance repairs in connection with the Optimists. I think this is a shared venture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll emphasize jointly.
Yeah.
And I just think it's important also to context. There's been lots of discussion about crime prevention and safety and violence reduction and anti-bullying programs in schools. And really that whole crime prevention effort, the Safety Village is just upstream of that. So it's all part of the bigger crime prevention and education of youth. So it's an important place to invest for sure.
I'm wondering if it's appropriate, just because, again, this is the Optimists have written, and they have a long standing history of support for not just the Safety Village, but policing in general. I'm wondering if a courtesy recognizing their significant contributions over the years, and it's not just a few years, it's decades of contributions to the police through the DARE program, through Safety Village, and there used to be an annual award for Officer of the Year that the Optimists funded and such. I'm just wondering if perhaps maybe a non-binding but a positive acknowledgement resolution might be appropriate, something along the lines of, the Halton Police Board recognizes the significant contributions of the Optimist Club over the years, and is actively working towards reestablishing the Safety Village program and use of the facilities for September. something September 2022, something along those lines. Give them some closure, or at least some understanding of where we're going. I don't think there's anything over and above what's already happening, but it just gives them something we can report back in the form of a letter that we've actually acted on the request without specifically binding any specific dates, but just a general kind of thing. Chief, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just the words mutual resolution came to mind within those words that you were just speaking. We're looking forward to a mutual.
Sure. Yeah, no, I totally get where you're coming from. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Would somebody be prepared to give us that motion? Thank you, Clerk. Seconded by Ingrid. Did you have a comment, Ingrid? Okay. Graham, do you have something? Were you able to scratch something down based on my comments there?
I basically took what you said word for word, sir.
Oh boy, you're impressive. And did you use the terminology mutual?
So I have that the Halton Police Board recognizes the significant contributions of the Optimus Club and advises that it is actively working towards reestablishing the Safety Village program and use of the facilities for September 2022. I'd be happy to insert the word mutual resolution in there somewhere. I could use some guidance as to where you'd like it.
Working
To mutually undertake and
yeah, that's it.
And fund.
Yeah.
The repairs. And I'll just give that the final edit offline with your permission. Sure.
Did you write that, Graham, or was it e-notes?
He has his custom notebook.
My custom notebook. Thank you, Chair, for beating me to that joke.
Here to Thursday. Try the veal. Okay, so that's the motion. We have a mover. We have a seconder. Is there any objection to the approval of the motion? I'm not seeing any, so that motion is approved. Thank you, everybody. We come to item number 5, operational verbal updates. Start with you, Chief. Anything from you, sir?
We have a fair number of officers still in Ottawa. We believe they will all be finished sometime tomorrow. They'll be back home tomorrow or Saturday. So certainly a specific thank you. We will look after on behalf of the board and the service to those individuals. But it was very important to play a contributing role to that undertaking in Ottawa. It was a shame that it could not or did not happen maybe a bit sooner. But when it did come together with a joint command structure with the OPP, RCMP, and Ottawa, and public order units and the Toronto police horses and all the resources that were up there, it was actually, I spent most of last weekend watching hour by hour the progress that was made so quickly through a large scale occupation in the nation's capital. So we're very proud of our officers that are up there. They've got some varied duties right now, but it's coming to a close for them. And certainly Ottawa, the city of Ottawa, and the Ottawa Police Service and others are thankful for our contributions. So I just wanted to bring you up to date, and I'll turn it over to the deputies, and I may have one other item after.
Who's up first? Deputy Hill.
Just one quick thing through the chair. I just wanted to give an update on a media release that will be coming out today. We were successful in obtaining a grant through the Ministry of the Solicitor General, specifically the Victim Support Grant. We're going to be getting $200,000 in funding over the next 2 years. We will be using that to do a new partnership that we've never done before, and I'm not aware of anyone else doing it. But we're going to be partnering with Halton Women's Place, and we will be embedding one of their violence against women workers in with our offender management unit. So as you likely know, in the past, from the past presentations we've done, we have an offender management that focuses on high-risk offenders. In this initiative, we're going to be focusing on high-risk survivors and victims. As part of that, we will also be continuing to partner with our victim services unit, which speaks 15 different languages. And to the point of an earlier comment, we will also be partnering with HMC as well, so that we can work on ensuring that we have culturally appropriate responses. So you will see that coming out. I believe Halton Women's Place will also be doing a media release later on today. It's something we're very excited to see happen, and I'm hoping that it'll be a game changer for us.
Thanks, Deputy. Any questions for Deputy Hill? See none, Deputy Wilkie, anything from you today, sir?
Just a quick update. I don't know if the chief shared it with the board or not, but we recently released an EDI document that's outward facing. And the idea is to educate and inform our community about the number of different initiatives, programs, training, and so forth that we do in that space. I think it's timely. It's a way and a mechanism for our command teams to have meaningful conversations with our citizens and elected officials, just to help them understand where we've made those commitments. So it's a live document or a living document, you will. So we don't want to just send it out in a PDF format. It's something that you can access on our website, and it's constantly updated as we continue to build programming and capacity as an organization. So if you haven't seen that, I'd encourage you to check it out. From a board perspective, a lot of great stuff in there. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy.
Thanks, Raj. And it's certainly thanks to Sergeant Ryan Smith and Julie Craddock and her team and Jennifer. That was shared with the board. I've got some very positive feedback from some of the board members. So it's a good document from an educational, proactive perspective to have out there in the community. The only other thing I wanted to highlight just before we finish the public session, because it's back in the consent agenda, is a fairly significant and positive surplus that we have budget-wise, which will now go into our reserves, which will help fund the capital projects such as the new facility in the north end. And to that end, we had a meeting yesterday, and that's progressing well. We're trying to streamline some of the timelines and get some of the approvals we need to get that building underway. So we'll bring that to the service and to the board as quickly as we can. They always take longer than I wish they would, but we're working together in a extremely cooperative way, as always, with regional building folks and Jane McCaskill and Bob Gray's team. So it's a really good mutual relationship there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions on operational verbal updates, members of the board? Oh, Ingrid, hello.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a comment in support of the chief's update regarding Ottawa, and that I too followed it very closely as it was televised. And we certainly found ourselves in a very difficult and tense situation. And the communities are certainly owe the police a great amount of thanks for all the police services that were involved, including ours from Halton. So we want to make sure that we express our thanks to our men and women that were involved in Ottawa. It was truly, it took a long time, but it did achieve the desired outcome. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Ingrid. It's great minds think alike, I guess could be said, because I'd actually, when the chief had advised me this was happening, I'd asked him to express the thanks and the appreciation of the board for the work, assuming that you would all concur with that. And I would just echo Ingrid's comments. You know, we're very proud of our officers, and we're very grateful for the work that they did on behalf of all Canadians in Ottawa over the past weekend. So Godspeed for their safe return, and thank you for the report. Anything further? Okay, members of the board, I want to draw your attention to the action registry, which is item 6.1 today. We have 3 items that remain on the action registry, or that are on, we have 4 items that are on the action registry. There is 1 item today that is due today, but that will come up under a different agenda. That's that's the communications item, and the other items are all yet to come. Fred, any comments on any of those that we should be aware of?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, working multiple devices here.
I understand. Yep.
I think I would just say that Graham and I have now moved the action registries into a shared Google Drive. So because there was a lot added the last few meetings. And we're also sharing the public and confidential ones with the chiefs, chief and chief staff regularly now to make sure that we can meet some of the board's expectations for replies and information.
Excellent.
But it's moving. Every once in a while, we have to slide something because of external circumstances, but we appreciate the board's tolerance of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Nav, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment on 8.1. Did we have any completion date scheduled on the audit of the Halton happenings? Fred?
I'm hoping to finish it in April. My plate is full in March with the retreat, and to tell you the truth, there's so many issues that's come up since in the new year. I'm a little reluctant to make that one a priority at the moment until the dust settles on some of the in-camera issues that are before the board.
Okay, so we can do April, I guess.
I'm aiming for April.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to receive the action registry, please? Thank you, Clark. Seconded by Apav. Thank you very much. Any comments or questions? Any objection to the receipt? I'm not seeing any, so that is received. Members of the board, is there any new business? Oh, sorry, we have the receipt of public correspondence. You'll note in Dilatrust the number of items of public correspondence. Several of them were related to the Optimist item. I'm sure you've read them all. Is there any questions, comments on any of the public correspondence items, or are we prepared to receive those right now? I'm seeing no comments or questions. Can I get a motion to receive the public correspondence, please? Moved by Clark, seconded by Ingrid. Thank you. Any comments, questions? Objections to receipt? See none, we'll move on. Members of the board, is there any new business to come before the board today in our public session? I'm not seeing any. However, I would like to take a moment just to ask all members of the board and those who are participating today from the staff to take a moment of silence in connection with the egregious activities that are happening in the Ukraine as we sit here today. Our community richly benefits from a proud tradition of Ukrainian Canadians that are throughout our community, and they worship here, they live here, they work here, and they contribute to our community. And what's happening in the Ukraine is just disgraceful. And the suffering and the pain and the death that is occurring, again, as we sit here today, should not go without notice. So I would just ask everybody to take a moment of silence in recognition of what's happening there and in solidarity with our friends in the Ukraine. Thank you, everybody. Let's pray for a quick resolution to that situation, and our friends in the community. We want them to know that we stand beside them, and I know that our police service will be there should there ever be a need to protect them during this time as well within our communities. Members of the board, it's time for us to move into closed session. This is, for the members of the public, a session that we deal with confidential items that are allowed to be dealt with in a closed session outside of the scope of the public. We're going to do that momentarily, but before I do that, I just want to thank everybody that's tuned in today, whether live or watching this afterwards on YouTube. We do appreciate your interest in the activities of the Halton Police Board. We are anxious to remain as transparent and as informative as possible. So we do welcome your attendance, and we would ask you to share this information with your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues. Let them know that our meetings are public. You can always get information about our activities from our website at haltonpoliceboard.ca. You can also subscribe to our newsletter, and once again, stay on top of everything that the Halton Police Board is up to. And we certainly welcome your contributions, your correspondence, your questions through the website or to our email, our communications person would be more than happy to connect you with the appropriate resources. Just note it in the attendee section that our friend from Metroland, David Lee, was monitoring today. So hello, David, and thank you for being there as part of the press. And with that, members of the board, I'll look for a motion to go into public session, or sorry, closed session. Clark, thank you. Pav seconded. Any comments or questions? So I guess there can't be in that case. Any objection going into closed session? I'm not seeing any, and I will note that it is currently 10:07. I'm going to suggest that we recess until, or that we reconvene at, let's say, 10:20. It'll give everybody a chance to refresh themselves and stretch their legs and relax their eyes from our Zoom experience for a few moments. And we'll see you at 10:20 in the confidential session. Thank you, everybody.